Good morning, evening, or night, everybody. I'm Jax, and in this video, I want to take a look at a question that I've seen kind of cropping up across the internet as of late. And that question is, should I play Splatoon 1 or 2 before Splatoon 3 releases? Now, as of the release of this video, we are about 3.5 months out from the release of Splatoon 3, barring any random delays. So if you are watching in the future when the game is out, I hope you're having fun in the Splatlands and that this video holds up well. To jump right in, I think first I want to address kind of the context behind this question. Most of the people I've seen asking this question are obviously not current fans of the series, but sort of prospective newcomers, people who are intrigued by either the trailers or Splatoon in general and want to know if they're going to be missing anything if they don't play the previous games. And if that's you, great! You are in the right place. This is the right video for you. If not, keep watching anyway and let me know if you agree with me down in the comments below. So, to all the prospective newcomers and possible veterans watching this video, my answer to this question, should I play Splatoon 1 and 2 before playing Splatoon 3, is a resounding, maybe? Splatoon as a series is not really known for a particularly dense narrative, or interlocking and ever-changing lore, or extremely complicated character relationships that develop over the course of multiple games. However, there are some characters that do reoccur in games. Some events in the first two games' plot that add context to each other and will probably affect Splatoon 3's plot, and just in general aid in an understanding of who is who, what is what, and why things are the way they are. I mean, in terms of settings, Splatoon 1, 2, and 3 all take place in different main hub areas. They all have different single-player locations and different shops, shopkeepers, and general plaza characters. Most of the knowledge of the previous games' settings will probably just aid in a sort of feeling of nostalgia, of comfort, of understanding, of, I know this place, I've been here before, or this has a similar vibe to the previous one, as well as sort of an aid to the comprehension of references to past games, and hype for returning elements, like seeing a weapon that you've played before being added as DLC, or new stages, returning stages from previous games, for returning weapons, returning gear, etc. Gameplay-wise, Splatoon has kind of felt similar between its first two installments, Splatoon 1 and Splatoon 2. Splatoon 2 did add some quality of life changes to gameplay, including changes to the UI. It also added a few different weapon classes with unique gimmicks like the dualies and the umbrella weapons, as well as all new sub-weapons and special weapons. But in general, the gameplay has a similar flow. The controls, the movement, and the flow of gameplay is relatively similar, albeit slightly improved and varied in 2 compared to 1. 2 also added a game mode called Clam Blitz, which is not present in 1, but other than that, the games play relatively the same. However, Splatoon 3 is looking to shake things up with some new movement mechanics like the Squid Roll and the Squid Surge, along with adding new subs and new specials with some remixed ones of old tossed in. Now, Splatoon 1, 2, and 3 all have a distinct visual style, gameplay, and world building under one main umbrella of the Splatoon series, but each entry seems to have its own flavor that sort of sets it apart from its siblings. Splatoon 1 is rougher, it's more raw, it's kind of more childlike in its story and its lore, and it's kind of faster paced and more unbalanced in terms of gameplay and weapons. Splatoon 2 is more polished, it's a bit darker in its overall tone and lore, especially with the addition of Octo Expansion. It's also a little bit slower paced in terms of gameplay, and overall it's more balanced, I would say, although it's been through a gauntlet of pretty awful metas, and it's kind of in a relatively bad meta right now, but Splatoon 3 is looking to be sort of more punk, more alternative, more risky and out there in terms of its setting and in its environment and in its aesthetic. It's also it's hard to tell where it's going to be in terms of its story and its lore implications. And it may be faster paced than Splatoon 1 and 2 with its increased movement options, or it could be a slog fest. We don't really know yet. So, to you, the prospective newcomer, I say this. What kind of fan and what kind of gamer are you? If you're like me and you decide that you want to play a new series, you're gonna go and play every single entry in the series to soak up all of the lore, all of the story, all of the gameplay changes, to see how a series has evolved over time while gaining an appreciation for that growth and getting a solid grasp on what the series is as a whole. If that's you, then I'd say yeah, you probably should play Splatoon 1 and or Splatoon 2, so you can see how the series has evolved. You can have knowledge of what Splatoon 3 is probably going to reference a bunch when you're in it. You'll be able to see old stages get remixed, you'll see old weapons come back and be reworked, and how their designs have changed, maybe new old abilities and characters, and how the lore is continued, how gear has changed and what could be added or taken away. This is with a major caveat that I recommend it for this type of fan though, and I'll get to that later. Now, if you're the type of fan who doesn't want to go in completely blind, but might not really care about all the small details, I'd say, You can watch Let's Plays or walkthroughs to catch up on the plot if you really care about it, and see some gear and gameplay, and you can also check out the multitude of great Splatoon content on YouTube to see the different aspects of the game if you really dig a certain part of it. But there's also just the option of buying the games and experiencing them yourself. This also ties into the caveat from the last one, which I will get to. Now, if you're the type of fan who doesn't care for numbering at all and just jumps into any series at whatever game is the newest, then I'd say, obviously, no, you don't need to play Splatoon 1 or 2 before jumping into 3. Granted, Splatoon is a series you can kind of get away with that kind of thing, like Final Fantasy, how each game is numbered, but they're all distinctly different in and of themselves. Now, if you're the type of fan who over-obsesses about small details, lore, characters, plot, etc., but you don't really care for gameplay that much, I'd also probably say no. You can dredge through the wikis, you can watch lore videos, you can read the manga, you can buy the art books, you can see what people have said about the game and dissect it about it on Discord or Twitter or Reddit for tidbits and facts and all that good stuff without having to buy the games. And honestly, it's probably easier to do that if you don't want to play the game, since obviously the majority of the game is gameplay. If you're the type of fan who wants to get to grips with the controls, you think playing Splatoon 1 or 2 is going to help you at least be good at the beginning so that you don't go into Splatoon 3 completely blind, I do have something that will probably cover you. If you're that type of person, I'd say no, you probably don't have to buy Splatoon 1 or 2, but this is why. Both Splatoon 1 and 2 had test fires, or sort of short online live demos for a weekend, where you could play the game, albeit it was a few weapons and a few specials and subs on 1 or 2 maps for a few hours before the game launches for free. Both 1 and 2 had a test fire the month the game launched, so naturally, there will most likely be a test fire in late August or early September before Splatoon 3 launches, so you don't have to buy Splatoon 1 or 2 if all you want to do is get to grips with how the game controls. You can just wait for the test fire, play it, see if you like how the game feels, and go from there. This is also kind of especially important since Splatoon 3, like I said, will have new movement mechanics not present in 1 or 2. So playing 1 and 2 won't really tell you anything about how good you're going to be with Squid Roll or Squid Surge if those games don't have it at all. Now, overall, I'd say, unless you have a feeling you're going to be an avid fan of this series, or you're someone like me who wants to see and experience everything about a series before diving into the newest entry, you can probably skip Splatoon 1 and 2 and be fine. I'd recommend at least watching some gameplay, maybe a competitive tournament, a let's play, or just any content on the games at all to get your feet wet, you know, whether that be to just catch up on the relatively basic plot, learn some of the characters' names, the settings, the maps, the modes, how the game plays, or just establish what's going on and why these characters might be doing this certain thing, or why different modes are in different games. And also remember, if you play Splatoon 3 and you love it, you can always go back and play the first two. But if you hate Splatoon 3, then hey, at least you didn't waste money buying the first two. And that kind of leads me to my final point in the caveat I mentioned earlier. The reason why I kind of only recommend buying the first two games, or at least one of the first two games, for people who really feel that they want to get all the nitty-gritty details and gameplay and experience, is because of their price. Especially Splatoon 2. Splatoon 2 still regularly sells for $59.99, with slight discounts to $49.99 or $47.99 on GameStop or Amazon. The lowest price I could really find for a used copy of Splatoon 2 was like $38.29 on Amazon, and even the game cartridge itself sells for like $30 on eBay. And just me, I cannot in good conscience tell people to buy a nearly 5-year-old game for $40, let alone $60 or even $80 if you buy it at full price with Octo expansion. The game has sold over 10 million copies, so there's not a shortage of these things. But Nintendo, in their sort of archaic ways, rarely ever discounts their first-party software meaningfully. It's typically just like a 10% discount, which is kind of nothing. I mean, with Splatoon 3 on the horizon anyway, Splatoon 2's main draw, the main reason people still play the game being its multiplayer, will probably be a ghost town when Splatoon 3 releases, and it'll see a steady decline over the coming months after Splatoon 3 releases, rendering the game essentially a bare-bones single-player game with a dead multiplayer scene, and that's not worth $40, let alone $60. However, if you don't mind spending the money, you can find a good deal, or you can borrow a copy from a friend, then of course I'd recommend you at least play Splatoon 2. It's a great game with a lively cast of characters, it's got charm and detail in every little inch of its world, addictively infuriating gameplay, fun yet repetitive single player, and an avalanche of collectibles and things to get, things to do, and things to splat. If you have a Wii U and can also get a deal or borrow a copy of Splatoon 1, I'd also recommend that. Albeit the multiplayer is pretty much dead nowadays, but the game still looks and plays great. It's fun to see where the series started, as well as having some awesome music, some cool mini games, and some stages, all of which I hope return in Splatoon 3. Now, regardless of what you end up choosing to do, I hope this video helped you at least a little bit in choosing what you might or might not play. Splatoon is a great series, and whether you decide to play it from the beginning or start fresh with number 3, I hope you'll fall in love with the games like I did and join the wonderful community. I hope to see you in the Splatlands. Please make sure to obliterate that like button and demolish subscribe if you want to see more of my videos. I'm Jext. Have a good one.